5 things you should never do, or 5 mistakes that speakers do more often than you think when giving a speech. Some of you might have heard of, some of them you may not have. Number 1, begin a sentence with the word so. I can be guilty of this too, but so kind of sounds like a filler word. And what you want to do then is not use filler words. So, don't say so. Instead, say therefore or henceforth. But lots of times you want to avoid the word so. Secondly, tell a joke just for laughs. You've heard this before from speakers. It immediately screams amateur speaker because they tell a joke. 2 penguins walk into a bar, whatever it might be, and it has nothing to do with the speech at all. It's just a way to get a cheap laugh, sometimes maybe a courtesy chuckle, and then they go on with their speech. Don't tell a joke just for a joke's sake. Find jokes, if you're going to use jokes, and you should. Your speech should have humor in it, but make it relevant to the subject at hand. Number 3, almost lost track of where I was at. Number 3, PowerPoint. You've heard this before. Do not rely on PowerPoint. You should be able to give your speech without ever looking at a slide deck. If you can do that, you've successfully prepared for your speech. Secondly, don't put everything on the deck, because then guess what people are doing? They're reading the deck, they're not listening to you. The deck should enhance what you're already talking about, but you want to create engagement and trust with the audience. You do that by you being live and in person and authentic and genuine and passionate on the stage. If you're going to send a deck that has all that information, send them an email, save everybody the time of actually listening to a speech. That's not why people show up to listen to a speech. Number 4 also speaks a little bit amateurish, which is saying, thanks so much for being here. Or at the end of the speech, saying, thanks so much for listening to my speech. You are there to offer the audience value. You're the expert. We serve the audience, but we own the stage. It's okay to say thank you at the end of the speech. Say your closing sentence and go, thank you. But you don't have to say, thanks so much for listening to my speech, or thanks so much for being here. It sounds like they're doing you a favor by sitting through your speech, and you have something to offer. They should be thanking you. And I don't mean it to sound arrogant. You just want to make sure that you don't reduce your credibility or reduce your perception of your confidence by saying, thanks so much for listening, or thanks so much for listening to my speech. Thanks so much for being here. A simple thank you is plenty. Last one, which some of you may not have heard of before. You've been to a speech or a workshop where they have a Q&A at the end. What happens is you finish your speech and you say, now I'll open it up for questions. And then there may be a whole bunch of questions and maybe no questions. The point is, eventually you run out of questions, and then the speaker goes, or the host might go if they're helping facilitate the questions. Are there any more questions? Anyone? Last chance. Okay, I guess we're done. Thanks so much for being here. And then we leave on this really low energy note. The trick is, before you give your closing, before you give your call to action or your final remarks, you can even say, hey, before I finish what I'm going to share with you, or before I give my conclusion, or before I give my final point, or whatever, however you want to say it, you say, I'd like to leave space now for questions and answers. Then you have the questions and the answers. And then when you get that dead space, when all the questions are done, you don't have to go, anyone? Anything else? I guess we're done here. You say, okay, great. Let me finish with this. And then you end on some high note, call to action, inspiration, motivation. You end on something that's high energy, and there's a definitive end to your speech. 5 things that speakers do that are mistakes that are easily corrected.